Welcome class to part 2 projects of your Python crash course textbook. In this video, I'm going to begin the alien invasion project that I talked about in your syllabus. So we're going to be creating a game through chapters 12, 13, and 14. I've split it up into 10 separate versions, so a little bit chunked at a time. So what we're going to build with this project is a game, and that game is going to have a player control a rocket ship that appears at the bottom center of the screen. The player can move the ship right and left using the arrow keys and shoot bullets using the space bar. When the game begins, a fleet of aliens fills the sky and moves across and down the screen. The player shoots and destroys the aliens. If the player destroys all the aliens, a new fleet appears that moves faster than the previous fleet, so increasing in level. If any alien hits the player's ship or reaches the bottom of the screen, the player loses a ship. If the player loses 3 ships, the game ends. So the first thing that we need to do as we work with our project is to install Pygame. So Pygame is the package that we will use from Python to work with a game environment. So to do so, you'll come to your terminal, and in your terminal you'll type what you see in your textbook. Okay, this is their prompt, so don't type the $sign. Go ahead and begin with Python and then space and then all the way through that command. So let me go ahead and install. Oh, looks like I typed it incorrectly. Okay, you can upgrade your pip version if you want, but it is not required. So the next step is to create a folder for our alien invasion game. So in your Python folder, where you're storing your chapter information, I want you to go ahead and create an alien invasion folder. So again, reminder just to keep everything lowercase, separating words by underscore. Within that folder, I need you to create a subfolder called images, all lowercase. And this is where we'll store all of our alien invasion files. Within images, we'll have the images that support our alien invasion game. So let's go ahead and begin coding. So we're going to create a file called alien_invasion.py, and we're going to go ahead and enter in this code. Okay, within your alien invasion folder, okay, so you can do a file, open folder, go to that alien invasion folder so you can see your files, save your file here, and then start putting by your name and your date at the top. And we'll see you after we have coded everything on this page. Okay, first version of our alien invasion, and we're just going to kind of go through how the code is structured. So first, make sure you put your name and date at the top. Every time you modify your file for submission, I want you to go ahead and modify that date. You're welcome to add edited dates underneath the initial date. That's totally up to you for documentation. You'll notice that there's a space in the textbook, but here I don't have a space. It's not necessary, but you certainly could have this space. So we begin with a class called Alien Invasion. Classes will be discussed and covered in chapter 9. Every class has a docstring, and this is just official documentation from the Python group that this is a required statement. So you are required to have docstrings. Do not skip adding them in. Every function starts with DEF, and functions are lined up vertically. Okay, and in this case, since they're part of a class which ends in a colon, they are one tab in from the left margin. Okay, so INIT is always going to have 2 underscores around it, even if it's just in a statement. So always 2 underscores, followed by that docstring. Okay, so these statements are part of the initialization function or the init function. This just kind of sets up our basic attributes or properties for the game. Okay, and then run game is where everything starts to execute. So again, we need to have our docstring, Here we have a while statement, which we'll talk about in chapter 7. Functions will be covered in chapter 8. Now you may be asking, well, why don't we wait until we cover those chapters? Because then we'd have a lot of code and a lot of potential debugging that we would run into for this project, and we would run simply out of time. So I always like to just kind of chunk it out. And then when we get to those chapters, you'll be like, oh, I've seen that before, and it'll start to kind of make sense in that way. Okay, so we have our for structure. Ends in a colon here, so these two lines are indented. For structure creates another tab. This one, if statement, creates a colon and another tab as well. Notice vertical alignment here. For is lining up here, this pygame.display.flip with our for. Then we come out, we have an if statement. If name equal main, okay, this is what's starting the whole execution of the game. We create an instance called AI, okay, and then we use that to go ahead and call the run game function. Okay, so let's go ahead and run it. I do want to tell you that I updated my height to 600 because I'm working on my laptop, and 800 works well in my office, but doesn't work so well when I'm just on my laptop. So we'll run. Okay, we get a black screen, a black background with the alien invasion caption. And I'll go ahead and exit that out. So that alien invasion caption right here, that's the text that appears in the title bar. So more explanation for this code is supplied in your book. Make sure that you're reading through the paragraph information to understand what line numbers and what they correspond to. So they'll say here at line 3, if we jump up here, we'll look at line 3. So the author does a great job of explaining what the code is able to do. Okay, for temporary, this is version 3 of, the third edition of the textbook. So the second edition doesn't have controlling the frame rate. And from what I've worked with, we get a Pygame error with the frame rate. So for now, I just want you to skip over this section of controlling the frame rate. So the next thing we're going to look at is setting the background color. So this needs a little bit of explanation, as you see that there is gray code versus black code. So gray code is a note to us as to where to place the new code, or to look at a code modification. So in this case, we're going to look for the caption statement, set underscore caption method, and we're going to add these two lines of code in. Please do not type the dash snip. This is just the book's way of not printing every line of code every time we go through a new update. If we did that, if the author did that, the book would be really large in size. So it's just a way of not printing the code in the book, but we do not remove the code. Use the last gray statement to insert the new code into your file. So coming with that, after our set caption, we are going to enter in our background color. So we're going to update it from that black background because that would be really hard to see what's going on in the game. So it's being assigned a light gray. So RGB values, the larger the number, the closer we get to white. Okay, coming down into run game, we'll see that we're going to enter after sysexit a couple new statements, but they line up with the for. So what I did is I used my backspace key to move back a couple tabs. So by typing this, we're referring, okay, to this property up here, and you can see how your editor is kind of highlighting those. So now if we run it, okay, we got that light gray background. We still have our caption at the top. So continuing on, we're going to create a settings file next. So go ahead and create a new file. So all the code entered for the settings file noted here. So next we're going to go ahead and bring our settings file in through an import statement in Alien Invasion. Now prior to doing this, I want you to go ahead and remove a couple lines of code in your Alien Invasion file. And I want you to remove these 2 lines because in our settings file we have created the background color setting. Okay, so we don't want to have duplicate code. Okay, so we'll go ahead and add a from statement. So from settings, make sure that you continue to name your files in lowercase. So from settings, import the settings class. Now if I jump over and look at my settings file, notice it's all lowercase here. And now notice the capital S on the settings class. Okay, case sensitive. Okay, and then after the init function, okay, again we're going to ignore the frame rate code for now. Okay, and we're going to put in an attribute called settings, and we're going to assign it the settings class. Okay, so when we want to refer to anything in this file, okay, we're going to use this to refer to it. Okay, so scrolling down into our dimensions for our screen, we're going to bring in them from the settings file. So settings attribute. Actually, I need to put self in front of that. Self will be explained in chapter 9. So screen underscore width. And screen underscore height. So now if I wanted to change my dimensions, I just come over here and then this file will automatically update based on that setting. Okay, so coming down in the run game, we'll just put settings here to refer to our background color. So let's go ahead and run it. Okay, and now same results. Okay, but now we've just kind of chunked out the code and placed it in a more logical way in a separate file. Okay, so the next thing we're going to look at is our ship file, and the ship file is located here. Okay, so we're going to do import Pygame, and then we'll create a class ship with a couple of functions in it. So let's come over here and create a new file. Okay, so name and date at the top. Import Pygame, and then I'll let you go ahead and code the rest of the file. Okay, so ship file is now coded. Okay, so we got those 2 functions, the init function as well as a function called blitme. So in this statement, pygame.image.load, we're referring to that images folder that we created when we created our structure for this project. The ship.bmp file you will download. Okay, you'll download that from your course shell. Okay, again, make sure you're reading through the paragraph information in your textbook to understand what each line of code does. So jumping back to Alien Invasion, we got to go ahead and import this file now. So importing the ship class. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and after our caption, we're going to go ahead and bring in ship. Okay, or create a ship attribute that refers to the ship class. Okay, and then down in run game, after the screen.fill statement, we put in self.ship.blitme. That was one of those functions that we coded inside of the ship file. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and run this and get that ship on the screen. Okay, so now when we run the Alien Invasion game, you should see the ship file down at the bottom. Now, if you don't see it at the bottom and you can see the bottom of your screen, then you need to go ahead and debug and figure out why the ship is not there. But if you just don't see this, Okay, it might be just because your height on your screen resolution is too high for your particular display. Okay, then coming in to refactoring the code. This is absolutely required that we do this portion. Refactoring is writing the code in a more simplified way that's easier to build on and to maintain. So we're going to create a couple new functions inside of Alien Invasion called check events, okay, and also update screen. So let's go ahead and enter in this information into Alien Invasion, and then I want you to go ahead and continue to do update screen, and then we'll go ahead and talk about them. Okay, so I've created kind of this structure that is talked about on page 237 and 238 of your textbook. So we're going to look at what do we need to move into check events and to update screen, because if we're not retyping the code. So when we come into run game, while this is true, we're going to call check events, and then we're going to call update screen. Okay, so what do we need to move into code for that? Well, looking under the check events method, we're going to go ahead and move this code that was currently in the while true, and we're going to place it here in the check events function. Now we have to work with the indentation, so using your backspace, we need to line up this code. Okay, so you can take this comment out because it really is about the same as the docstring. So for event, okay, and then if we look at the code for update screen, we're going to see that it is this code right here. So I'm going to go ahead and delete some lines here, and then of course we have to backspace, and you can see that the editor is pointing to an indentation problem there. Okay, so let's go ahead and run it. Okay, we get the same results, but we have organized or refactored our code into more of a maintainable structure. So we know that if we need to add anything to check events, which is key presses and mouse events, we can go here, and we don't have this big block of code that will continue to grow under run game. And the same thing with update screen. So if you have any concerns, questions, debugging, all I ask is that you send me a zip file of your Alien Invasion folder. So I need to have a complete Alien Invasion folder, which will include these 3 files, or as we continue to build, there'll be more files, as well as your images folder. So I have exactly what you have on your computer, so that when I'm debugging, it's the exact same thing. So questions, let me know.